The little girl couldn't have been more than 8 when she stepped in front of me at the harvest festival. "Are you Grant Holloway?" I lowered the clipboard in my hand. "I am." She studied my face, then held up a folded DNA report. "Then I think you're my dad." Before I could answer, a woman pushed through the crowd and pulled her close. "June, no." Her frightened eyes met mine. He was never supposed to know. I had never seen either of them before. But one decision I had made 17 years earlier had just found me. What would you do if a child called you dad? But another man had already spent her whole life earning that name. Behind us, the festival music continued as if my world had not just changed. I looked at the woman holding the girl's shoulders. What exactly did that test say? The woman tightened both hands around the girl's shoulders. "It said I have a close match to the Holloway family," the girl answered before her mother could stop her. And Aunt Audrey's picture was on the same page. Aunt Audrey. My sister had taken an ancestry test the previous Christmas. I had laughed at her for it. Now the folded report in the girl's hand felt heavier than any document I had ever signed. "What's your name?" I asked. "June Lane." The woman drew her closer. "June, please. I only asked him." "I know." Her voice was gentle with the child and frightened with me. Around us, tourists moved between cider stands and rows of late-season grapes. I pointed toward the side of the tasting barn. "We shouldn't do this in the middle of the festival." The woman hesitated, then followed me, keeping June between us. "My name is Rebecca Lane," she said. "And no, I didn't tell her to find you. But you knew my name. For 3 weeks." June opened the report. A family tree graphic showed Audrey's name beside the words "close biological relative." Beneath it was a photograph copied from the Vineyard website. Audrey and I stood together at last year's harvest dinner. June tapped my face. "You have my chin." Rebecca closed her eyes. I looked from the paper to the child. The resemblance was not proof, but once I saw it, I could not stop seeing it. The shape of her mouth, the tilt of her head, the gray-green eyes my father and Audrey shared. "How old are you?" 8. 17 years earlier, when I was 22 and desperate to help pay my father's hospital bills, I had made anonymous donations at a fertility clinic in Portland. The clinic had promised that donors and families would never know one another. I had believed anonymity meant the decision would remain behind me forever. Rebecca saw recognition cross my face. "You remember," she said. "I remember signing forms." June looked up at her mother. "So I'm right." Rebecca crouched in front of her. "You found a biological connection. That does not mean Grant is replacing your dad." The word replacing caught me. "Her dad?" I asked. "My husband, Thomas. He raised her from the day she was born." "Where is he?" Her expression changed. "He died 3 years ago." June folded the report carefully. "Mom said Dad was still my dad even if we found the person who helped make me." "She was right," I said. Rebecca studied me, surprised. I lowered myself so June would not have to look up. "Thomas is your father. Whatever this paper says, that does not erase him." "Then what are you?" Before I could answer, Rebecca said, "We don't know enough yet." "You know enough to say I was never supposed to know." Her face tightened. "That wasn't about hiding June from you. It was about protecting the family she already has." "From me?" "From what happens when biology enters a home and starts acting like permission." June looked between us, suddenly worried. "I'm not asking permission to take anything," I said. "Good," Rebecca replied. "Because I won't let anyone turn my daughter into evidence of what they think they're owed." For the first time, I understood that she was not only afraid of me learning the truth. She was afraid of what I might do with it. I handed her my phone. "Put in your number. We talk somewhere private. No lawyers, no Vineyard staff, and no promises to June until we understand what happened." Rebecca did not move. Then June slipped her hand into her mother's. "Please." Rebecca entered her number. "The Lantern Bookshop," she said. 7 tonight. After closing. She guided June toward the parking lot. My phone rang before they reached the gate. Audrey's name appeared on the screen. I answered. Her first words were, "Grant, there's something in my DNA results you need to see." Audrey did not waste time with greetings. "The match is a child," she said. 8 years old. The amount of shared DNA is too high for anything casual. "Grant, she could be your daughter." I turned away from the festival crowd. "Could be. Either your daughter or mine, and I'm fairly certain I would remember giving birth. Under other circumstances, I might have laughed." "Her name is June Lane." Audrey went silent. "You found her." "She found me." I told her about the report, Rebecca, and the sentence that had stopped the world around me. When I finished, Audrey asked, "Are you going to tell her about the clinic?" "I think her mother already knows." At 7, the Lantern bookshop was dark except for a brass lamp behind the counter. Rebecca unlocked the door and let me inside. June was gone. "My mother-in-law has both children tonight," she said. "This conversation is between adults." 2 framed photographs stood beside the register. In one, Rebecca stood beside a dark-haired man while June sat on his shoulders. "Thomas?" I asked. Rebecca nodded. "He knew June wasn't biologically his?" "He chose the donor with me." The answer made me regret the question. She led me to a reading table where a folder waited. "Thomas was diagnosed with infertility before we married," she said. "We spent 4 years trying to build a family. June was not an accident or a secret. She was wanted before she existed." I didn't say otherwise. "You didn't have to. Men hear the word donor and sometimes imagine a door was left open for them." I signed an anonymous agreement. I never expected a door. Good. But now an 8-year-old has my family in her DNA results. Rebecca folded her arms. "That is why I agreed to meet you." June's class had been assigned a family history project. Rebecca allowed an ancestry kit because she believed the donor database was private. The company later linked June's account to Audrey's public profile. "I contacted Audrey through the site," Rebecca said. "I asked only for medical history. She didn't tell me. I asked her not to until I knew the match was real. You investigated me. I verified a risk before bringing a stranger into my daughter's life." The word stranger struck harder than it should have. "How long have you known it was probably me?" 3 weeks. "And your plan was to collect my medical information and disappear?" "My plan was to protect June. From the truth. From confusing biology with fatherhood." I forced my anger down. "You keep saying that as if I arrived demanding custody. You arrived 10 minutes ago. I don't know what you'll demand tomorrow." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Rebecca opened the folder. Inside was a clinic record with a donor identification number. P417. 17 years earlier, that number had replaced my name on every form I signed. Rebecca pushed the page toward me. "June's medical file lists the same donor code." I looked at her. "So this isn't just a possible match?" "No," she said quietly. "It probably isn't." My phone vibrated. Audrey had sent a message. The estimate had updated. "Parent or child? 99.7%. Rebecca read it over my shoulder. For the first time that evening, the fear in her face gave way to grief. "She already had a father," she whispered. "I don't know what this makes you." The next morning, I drove to Audrey's veterinary clinic before her first appointment. She was waiting with 2 coffees and a look that told me she had slept as badly as I had. "I pulled my full report," she said. "June shares enough DNA with me to be my niece." I sat across from her. Rebecca already showed me the donor code. Audrey slid a folder across the table. "Then confirm everything through a private lab. No public database. No assumptions." By noon, Rebecca had agreed. We met at a clinic in Salem where no one knew the Holloway name. June believed she was there for an updated family health test. Rebecca wanted the explanation kept simple until the result was official. June watched the technician open the sealed swabs. "Does this tell me if I inherited Grant's bad handwriting?" she asked. "I have excellent handwriting." Rebecca glanced at my form. "You write your 7 like a lightning bolt." June smiled. Then I probably got it from him. The joke was small, but it tightened something behind my ribs. After the samples were collected, Rebecca and I stood beside the parking lot while June read in the back seat. "There's something else," Rebecca said. She handed me a note from June's pediatrician. A faint, irregular heartbeat had been detected during a routine exam. It was probably harmless, but the doctor wanted complete medical history from the donor side. "My father had cardiomyopathy," I said. Rebecca's face changed. "Was that in the clinic records?" "He was diagnosed after I donated. So June's file wouldn't include it."
No.
For the first time, Rebecca looked less afraid of what I might take and more afraid of what she had not known. "I'll give you everything," I said. "My records, Audrey's, my father's if the hospital still has them." She nodded, then looked toward June. "I need boundaries before this goes further." "Name them." "You do not appear at her school or our house without asking. You do not make promises about holidays, weekends, or the future. You do not call yourself her father in front of Caleb. And June. She calls you Grant until she understands the difference between biology and the life Thomas gave her." I understood the rules. I still felt their sting. "What do I get to ask for?" Rebecca folded her arms. "One honest meeting after the result," I said.
No lawyers.
"No claims. Just a chance to answer her questions." She studied me. "You really don't want custody?" "I met her yesterday. That has not stopped other people from deciding what they deserve." "I don't deserve anything yet." The answer surprised both of us. My phone rang the next afternoon while I was walking the upper vineyard. "The genetic relationship is consistent with biological paternity," the lab director said. I stopped between 2 rows of Pinot Noir vines. "How certain?" "Greater than 99.99%. The hills stayed where they had always been, but nothing in my life felt fixed anymore. I called Rebecca. She answered quietly. "June is beside me." "Then tell her the truth." Pause followed. "You understand this does not make you her dad." "I understand biology isn't permission." Her voice softened. 1 hour. Saturday morning at the bookshop.
No promises.
"She calls you Grant." Then June came onto the line. "Grant." "Yes. Does this mean I can ask you all the questions now?" I looked across the vineyard toward a life I had never imagined. "Yes," I said, "but I may not know all the answers." Saturday morning, I arrived at the Lantern Bookshop 10 minutes early with a children's book about grape genetics tucked under my arm. Rebecca unlocked the door but did not invite me farther than the front reading room. "She's been awake since 6, she said. "Caleb thinks this is a terrible idea. Do you?" "I think not knowing has already become worse than knowing." June appeared from behind a shelf carrying a notebook and 3 sharpened pencils. I wrote down my questions. "I brought a book." She eyed the cover. "That seems like avoiding the questions." Rebecca almost smiled. We sat at a round table beneath a painted paper lantern. June opened her notebook. "Do you like thunderstorms?" "Yes." "Olives?"
No.
"Roller coasters?" "Only the ones that don't look assembled by teenagers." She marked each answer with surprising seriousness. Then she asked, "Why didn't you have children?" Rebecca looked at me, but she did not rescue me. "I thought I had time," I said, "and I was afraid I wouldn't be good at it." "Because your dad wasn't?" The accuracy of the question unsettled me. "My father worked hard," I said carefully, "but he wasn't very good at telling people when they mattered." June wrote something down. "What did you write?" "That you answer slowly when something hurts." Rebecca turned toward the window. I opened the book and showed June a diagram explaining how grapevines inherited color, size, and resistance to disease. "So DNA gives me your chin and maybe your heart problem?" she asked. "Maybe some traits, but it doesn't decide what books you love, what jokes make you laugh, or who taught you to ride a bicycle." "Dad taught me." "Then that belongs to him." June's pencil stopped. "I'm forgetting his voice." The room changed. Rebecca closed her eyes. I could see her deciding whether to end the meeting. Instead, I asked June what she remembered. He sang badly. He burned pancakes. He called every bird a hawk. Those are good things to keep. What if I remember you more because you're here? I leaned forward. Then I'll help you remember him. Rebecca's gaze lifted to mine. June turned to a clean page and drew 3 circles. She labeled 1 Thomas, 1 MOM, and 1 Grant. Where do I put myself? In the middle, I said. You don't have to choose a side. The bell above the front door rang. A tall boy entered wearing a school jacket and a guarded expression. He looked at the 3 circles before looking at me. Caleb, Rebecca said. I thought you were with Grandma. I forgot my charger. He had not forgotten anything. He had come to inspect the stranger sitting beside his sister. June held up the genetics book. Grant says Dad is still my dad. Caleb's jaw tightened. He doesn't get credit for saying something obvious. Caleb, Rebecca warned. It's fine, I said. He looked at me. No, it isn't. June lowered her notebook. Caleb waited until Rebecca took her to find a bookmark. Then he stepped closer to the table. My father already gave her a family, he said. Don't make her think she needs another one. I'm not here to replace him. Everyone says that before they start changing things. He left without taking the charger. When the hour ended, June handed me the page with the 3 circles. You can keep this until next time. Rebecca watched me fold it carefully. There will be a next time? I asked. She looked toward the door Caleb had closed behind him. That depends on whether you understand that gaining June's trust may cost Caleb his. The broken pipe had turned Thomas's memorial garden into a shallow river by the time I reached the bookshop. Water ran beneath the raised beds and pooled around a stone bench engraved with his name. Rebecca stood ankle-deep in mud, holding a useless wrench. Caleb was already there, digging frantically near the main valve. I can shut it off, I said. Caleb did not look up. We can handle it. The pipe burst again, spraying his jacket. Rebecca handed me the wrench. Apparently we cannot. I found the valve beneath a layer of wet mulch and stopped the water. The damage was worse than it first appeared. One section of the irrigation line had cracked beneath the path, and several young plants had already tilted in the softened soil. This whole side needs to come up, I said. Caleb's expression hardened. Dad built that path. Then you should show me how he laid it. He expected an argument. The absence of one seemed to confuse him. For the next hour, Caleb directed me while I lifted stones one at a time. He knew where Thomas had hidden the junction box, which plants had deeper roots, and why the lavender had been placed beside the reading bench. He said people remember better when a place has a smell, Caleb said. That sounds like something worth preserving. He glanced at me. You don't have to agree with everything he did. I'm not agreeing.
I'm listening.
That earned me the first look from him that was not openly hostile. June arrived with Martha carrying towels and paper cups of hot chocolate. She immediately found a small grapevine near the back fence. Can this go here? She asked. Caleb went still. The empty patch had once held a maple Thomas planted the year June was born. A storm had destroyed it after his death. Rebecca opened her mouth, but I spoke first. Ask Caleb. He knows the garden. June turned to him. Can it? He stared at the vine for a long moment. Not there, he said. The roots need more sun. He led her to a place beside the fence and helped dig the hole. Later, while the children packed wet soil around the vine, Rebecca and I carried broken pipe toward the alley. You handled that well, she said. I followed instructions. That is not usually your strongest quality. I looked at her. You have known me for 8 days. It has been a very informative 8 days. For the first time, we laughed together. The sound faded gently, leaving us standing closer than either of us had intended. Rebecca looked back at the garden. Thomas built all of this after my mother died, she said. He believed grief needed somewhere physical to go. And yours went here? Some of it. What about the rest? She met my eyes. The rest went into making sure nothing else could change. I understood then that her rules were not only about June. They were walls around a life she had already lost once. You keep acting like leaving before anyone needs you is the same as never hurting them, she said. The sentence landed harder than I expected. Before I could answer, her phone rang. Rebecca listened, and the warmth left her face. When she hung up, she looked at June. Her pediatrician wants the full donor history, she said. As soon as possible. I'll get it. There may be more than the heart issue. What did the doctor find? Rebecca tightened her grip on the phone. She wants us both there tomorrow. The next morning, Rebecca and I sat across from Dr. Neil Warren in a small consultation room above the former fertility clinic. The clinic itself had closed years earlier. Neil now managed the archived records for a regional medical group, and he handled the donor files as if every folder contained a live wire. He looked at me over the top of his glasses. Grant Holloway? Yes. Former donor P417? The number still felt less personal than my own name, but it carried more weight now. Yes. Neil turned to Rebecca. And you are June Lane's legal parent? I am. He opened a thin file. The original screening showed no cardiac abnormalities at the time of donation. However, Mr. Holloway's father was diagnosed later, which means the family history in June's file is incomplete. Rebecca's hand tightened around the strap of her purse. What exactly did her doctor find? A minor rhythm irregularity. Nothing here suggests an emergency, but with the updated history, her pediatric cardiologist wants additional monitoring. I felt relief and guilt arrive at the same time. What do you need from me? Records from your father, your own cardiac workup, and permission to contact your sister if her physician has relevant information. You have it. Neil paused. Before you agree, understand that reopening this file formally connects your identity to June's medical record. The original agreement protected both parties. Rebecca leaned forward. Her health matters more than the agreement. I agree, I said. Neil studied us as if he were waiting for the disagreement hidden beneath the answer. Many people say that before questions of access, inheritance, and parental status begin. I'm not here for any of those things. You may not be today. Rebecca looked at me. Neil's warning was fair. A week earlier, I had not known June existed. Now I knew the exact way she pushed her hair behind one ear when she was thinking. Attachment had already begun before anyone gave it permission. I'll sign the medical release, I said, but I want it noted that I'm not requesting changes to custody or guardianship. Neil nodded slowly. That would be wise. After the appointment, Rebecca and I stood beneath the awning while rain moved across the parking lot. You didn't hesitate, she said. About the records? About giving them what they needed. She shouldn't pay for a decision I made before she was born. That decision helped us have her. I looked at Rebecca. It was the first time she had spoken about the donation without sounding as if it belonged only to Thomas and the clinic. I don't know what to do with that, I admitted. You don't have to do anything with it. Her voice softened. Just don't disappear because this becomes complicated. The words surprised me. I thought disappearing was what you wanted. I wanted control. That isn't the same thing. For a moment, the rain was the only sound between us. Then Rebecca's phone rang. June's voice came through loudly enough for me to hear. Mom, ask Grant if he can come to family night. Rebecca closed her eyes. It's Friday, June continued. We're presenting our family projects. Rebecca looked at me, then toward the clinic windows. Yes, she said carefully. He can come. When she ended the call, I saw Caleb standing across the parking lot beside Martha's car. He had heard everything. His face told me Friday night was not going to be simple. Friday night, the school gym smelled like poster paint, coffee, and the powdered sugar from a bake sale table near the entrance. Families moved from one display to another while students stood beside cardboard family trees covered in photographs, names, and colored lines. June's board was titled Where I Come From. Thomas's photograph sat at the center. He was holding June as a toddler, both of them wearing matching paper crowns. Beneath it, she had written, "The dad who taught me to ride a bike, make pancakes, and look for hawks. I stopped several feet away. Rebecca stood beside me. She chose every word herself. She chose well. Caleb was on June's other side, adjusting a photograph that had started to peel away from the board. He had barely looked at me since I arrived. June pointed to Rebecca first, then Caleb, then Martha. She spoke clearly, though her hands kept twisting the hem of her sweater. When she reached Thomas, her voice softened. My dad died when I was 5, but he is still part of our family. Caleb's shoulders eased. Then June turned toward me. And this is Grant. He is my biological father. A few parents glanced in my direction. I kept my face neutral. June looked down at her note card. Then she set it aside. He is also my other dad. The gym seemed to go quiet around us, even though no one had stopped talking. Caleb stared at her. Rebecca whispered, "June." "What?" June asked. "It's true." Caleb stepped away from the display. "Caleb," Rebecca called. He pushed through the gym doors before she could reach him. Rebecca turned to me. "Did you tell her to say that?"
No.
"You had to know she was thinking it." I knew she had questions. I didn't know what she planned to call me. Her eyes flashed. "You could have corrected her. In front of everyone? You could have told her this was too soon." June stood frozen beside her board, listening. I lowered my voice. "This is not the place. That did not stop you from standing there while she introduced you as her father." The accusation hurt because part of me had liked hearing it. That was the truth I could not defend. I found Caleb behind the auditorium near the bicycle racks. He was kicking gravel against the brick wall. "I don't want to talk to you," he said. "I know. Then leave." I stayed several feet away. "She called you dad in front of everyone." I heard her. "My father built that whole family. You showed up with a test result." "You're right." He looked at me, almost angry that I had agreed. "I didn't earn what she called me tonight," I said. "And I should have told her that before we came." Caleb's eyes filled, but he blinked the tears away. "What happens when mom starts choosing you too?" I had no answer that would not sound like a promise I had no right to make. Rebecca found us a moment later. She put one arm around Caleb and looked at me over his shoulder. "You get to walk away if this becomes too painful," she said. "My children don't." "Then maybe I should step back." Caleb looked away. Rebecca's expression went still. From the open gym door behind us, June's voice carried into the night. "Is this the part where biological fathers leave?" Caleb disappeared before anyone could answer June. Rebecca went after her daughter. I stayed near the bicycle racks, unsure whether following would help or make everything worse. Martha found me 10 minutes later. "Caleb isn't with Rebecca," she said. "He took his father's old letter box from my car. We found him in the memorial garden behind the bookshop, sitting on Thomas's stone bench with a weathered wooden box beside him. The young grapevine June had planted leaned against its stake in the wind." Caleb looked at me. "You weren't supposed to come." "I know." "Then why are you here?" "Because your grandmother is worried. And because leaving every time someone tells me to has not worked very well." The box held 2 envelopes. Caleb's had been opened many times. June's was still sealed. "Dad wrote these before the surgery that was supposed to fix his heart," Caleb said. "He thought he'd be home in 3 days." I sat at the far end of the bench. "Why did you take June's letter?" "Mom said we might read it when June was older. Then you showed up." "That doesn't explain why you hid it." Caleb rubbed his thumb across Thomas's handwriting. "What if he wrote about the donor? What if he said June should find you? Then everyone gets permission to move on. Moving forward is not the same as leaving him behind. That sounds easy when he wasn't your dad." He was right. I let the silence stand. After a while, Caleb asked, "What happens if she loves you enough to forget him?" The question carried more fear than anger. Then my job would be to remind her who taught her how to love before I ever arrived. Rebecca and June entered the garden with Martha behind them. June's eyes were swollen from crying, but she did not look at me. Caleb held out the letter. "I kept this," he said.
I'm sorry.
June took it. Can Mom read it? Rebecca sat beside her and broke the seal. Thomas's letter began with memories. June asleep on his chest, flour in her hair during pancake mornings. The first time she called a sparrow a hawk because he had taught her badly. Then Rebecca stopped. What? June asked. Rebecca pressed one hand to her mouth before continuing. Thomas had written that June might one day search for the man whose biology helped create her. If that happened, he wanted her to be curious without guilt. You will never have to choose between the father who helped give you life and the father who was lucky enough to raise you, Rebecca read. Love does not become less true because another truth arrives. Caleb began to cry before June did. She moved beside him, and he wrapped both arms around her. Rebecca folded the letter with shaking hands. I thought silence was protecting them, she said. It was protecting the moment before everything changed, I replied. That isn't the same thing. June finally looked at me. Are you still leaving?
No.
I stepped closer but stopped before reaching her. I'm also not asking you to call me anything you're not ready to mean. Caleb wiped his face. What are you asking for? A chance to do this without taking anything from your father. The next morning, I called a family attorney. By afternoon, I had a document ready for all of them to read. The meeting took place after closing time at the Lantern Bookshop. Rebecca locked the front door while June arranged 6 chairs in a circle beneath the paper lanterns. Caleb stood near Thomas's photograph with his hands in his pockets. Audrey sat beside Martha, who held a copy of Thomas's letter against her chest. I placed a folder on the reading table. Rebecca looked at it. What did you do? I asked a family attorney to write down what I should have said clearly from the beginning. I opened the folder and passed copies around. The document stated that I was not seeking custody, guardianship, control of June's education, or any challenge to Rebecca's legal authority. It also acknowledged Thomas Lane as the father who had raised her and preserved that role in every practical decision. I had asked for only 3 things: permission to provide medical information, a schedule of contact approved by Rebecca, and the right to step back if June ever wanted space. Caleb read the first page twice. So you could still change your mind later, he said. I could file anything later. A piece of paper cannot remove that possibility. His face hardened. But the document means Rebecca would have proof of what I promised tonight, I continued. And if I ever acted against it, she would have something stronger than my word. Audrey looked at me. You understand this gives you very little. It gives June room to decide. Martha finally spoke. My son spent 8 years being her father without asking whether biology made it official. I know. Do you? Her voice was not cruel, but it was sharp. You get to be the new person. New people are exciting. Thomas's photographs, stories, and an empty chair. I looked toward the framed picture beside Caleb. Then I will never ask them to make his memory compete with my presence. Martha studied me for a long moment. My son gave June a father, she said. You gave her life. Those truths do not have to fight. But they will if you forget which one of you earned her childhood. I won't forget. June had been quiet through most of the conversation. Now she raised her hand as if we were in a classroom. Do I get a rule? Rebecca nodded. You should. June looked at me. No disappearing when people get mad. The request was so simple that it hurt. I can ask for time to calm down, I said. But I won't disappear. And no pretending Dad didn't exist. Never. Caleb reached into his jacket and removed Thomas's letter. He walked over and held it out to me. I did not take it immediately. This belongs to your family. You keep saying you want to help us remember him, Caleb said. Then read what he wanted. I accepted the letter with both hands. It was not forgiveness, but it was trust, and that felt heavier. After Martha and Audrey left, June went upstairs to help Caleb close the reading room. Rebecca remained beside the table. You signed away every advantage you might have had, she said. I wasn't looking for an advantage. What were you looking for? A way to stay without making your children afraid of what I might take. Her eyes softened. Then she asked, and what are you hoping to become to me? The question found the part of me that had been pretending not to want an answer. I closed the folder. "Something you choose," I said. "But not tonight, and not because you're grateful." 3 months later, I knew which floorboard in Rebecca's kitchen creaked, which tea Caleb drank when he pretended not to be worried, and how June's questions became more complicated whenever she was tired. I also knew that staying was not dramatic. It was Tuesday cardiology appointments, Thursday homework at the bookshop, and Saturday mornings repairing the trellis behind Thomas's garden. June's follow-up tests showed no immediate danger. She would need regular monitoring, but the doctor told us we had caught the risk early. Rebecca cried in the parking lot after that appointment, not because anything was wrong, but because for the first time in weeks, she could breathe. I stood beside her without touching her until she reached for my hand. That was how most things began between us. Not with promises, with permission. Caleb still did not trust change easily, but he stopped leaving the room when I arrived. One afternoon, he brought me Thomas's old toolbox and asked whether I could help rebuild the garden trellis. "Dad always said he'd finish it," he told me. "Then we finish what he started." We kept the original beams, even the one with Thomas's crooked pencil marks. June chose a new vine for the center, and Caleb insisted we train it beside the older growth instead of cutting anything back. Rebecca watched us from the bookshop doorway. "You finally learned to follow instructions," she said. "I've had excellent teachers." Our first real date happened 2 weeks later at a small restaurant outside town. No children, no lawyers, no medical files. Rebecca wore blue. I spent the first 10 minutes trying not to stare. "This is strange," she admitted. "Bad strange. New strange." I understood. "I'm not asking you to leave Thomas behind." "I know." She looked down at her hands. "That's why I'm here." We did not kiss until the third date. Even then, it was gentle, brief, and followed by Rebecca laughing because June had called twice to ask whether the restaurant served pie. By early spring, the vine June planted had reached the first wire of the trellis. We gathered in the garden to tie the new growth into place. Martha brought lemonade. Audrey brought pruning gloves no one used. Caleb argued with June about which branch belonged on which side. Then June looked at me. "Dad, can you help me tie this one?" Everything stopped inside me. She had called me Dad before I even knew her name. That first time had been a guess, a question, and a secret falling open. This time, she knew exactly what she meant. I looked at Rebecca. She smiled and nodded. I stepped beside June and guided the vine around the wire without forcing it. "Not too tight," Caleb warned. "It needs room to grow." He was right. I loosened the tie. Behind us, Thomas's old beams held steady while the new vine climbed beside them. I could not replace the father June had lost. I could not become the man Caleb still missed. And I did not need to. I had finally learned that love was not proven by taking someone's place. It was proven by staying long enough to earn one of your own.